Our first presenter is Wojciech Jodźwiak from Institute of Slavic Philology University of Adam Mickiewicz in Poznan. His paper is Museum, Archive of Memory, Polish Cinema History Museums. Wojtek will present his paper in Bulgarian, so enjoy.
Благодаря ви много. Определение на музей, прието от Международния съвет на музеите на Общото събрание, проведено в Прага през 2022 година, предполага, че музей е, както виждате, институция, която трябва да изследва, събира, интерпретира за какво? За обучение и споделяне на знания. Съвсем ясно е, че освен очевидната си функция за обществено място, осигуряваща достъп до музейни предмети, според членове на Международния съвет, тази институция има за своя основна задача преследването на научни и образователни цел, без основа на непрекъснато натрупвани ресурси, които, както и резултати от научни изследвания, трябва да бъдат достъпни за обществеността. Задачата да се събират, съхраняват, систематизират, опазват и най-вече да се предоставят на разположение артефакти, които са изгубили първоначална си полезност, но напълно заслужават да бъдат запазени, прави така, че музеят изпълнява роля на своеобразен архив, който дава възможност не само за научна дейност, но и за контакт с събраните предмети от по-далечно или по-близко минало, който позволява тяхното изучаване и тълкуване. То е пространството, позволяващо пряк и почти осъзнаем контакт с друга далечна реалност, с нейните реликви, фрагменти и постижения. В този уникален архив, съставен от няколко отдела, който не се ограничава само до предмети от една категория, благодарение на целонасочено събиране на артефакти в едно общо пространство, техният семантичен потенциал се засилва и става видим, което прави първоначалния им контекст подчертан или възстановен. Те се превръщат в места на паметта, както по този начин придобиват наративна сила. А музеят, чрез процеса на контекстуализация, придобива статут на място на места на паметта. Подобно за всеки архив, музеят е пространство, в което се срещат настоящето и миналото, паметта и забравата. То е място за откриване на механизмите, подчинени на различни цели за създаване на моделиране на паметта, пространство за нейното възвръщане и уникална функция на музея е да се превърне в терен за възпоминание на забравянето или обреченото на забрава. Подчертавайки изобразователна роля на музея, Кинга Анна Гайда го нарича вакуумна зона, подчертавайки, че чрез предоставяне на достъп и припомняне, както и чрез спасяване от необратимо унищожаване и по този начин от загуба, тази институция играе огромна роля в процеса на записване и запазване на факти и елементи на наследството, както в национален, така и в световен мащаб. Кшиштоф Помян в монументалния си труд «Музей. Световна история» посочва, че изискването екс-дефиниционе за събиране и съхраняване превръща музей в пространството, в което има комбинация от ориентация към бъдещето и отговорност към настоящето. Тази характеристика е допълнена от принципа на запазване в възможно най-оригинален или непроменен вид от момента на придобиването, прави тази културна институция уникална, тъй като позволява на зрителя и следователя да влезе в пряк контакт, обикновено визуален, с различни фигури на света от далечното минало, изразени чрез предмети от него. Предметите събрани в музеите, както и тези съхранявани в архивите, се извеждат от употреба. Лишени от своя първична характеристика, те се превръщат в неизползваемите, но и не подлежащи на износване семиофори. Семиофори е термин, предложен от Кшиштоф Помян, които представляват невидима сфера, придобиват специфично значение. Изключени от ежедневна употреба, често повредени, даже унищожени или отпадъци, Те се разглеждат, изучават и предпазват от износване. Основната черта на семиофора, чрез която той може да покаже своята значимост, е да бъде достъпен и да стане част от по-голям комплект, да стане част от колекция. Ясно разграничение между полезни и значими предмети, между вещи и семиофори, конституира музеите, архивите и определя правила за изграждане на изложба и изложената колекция. Събирането и осигуряването на достъп до семиофори, свързани с история на полското кино и кинематография, също е част от идеята за създаването на полски институции. Тяхната цел е да съхранят и да подчертават паметта най-вече за приноса на полските кинематографисти, за развитието на световно филмопространство и за местните особености в художественото и техническо отношение, като разбира се отчита исторически и политическия контекст. Спецификата на полските филмови, свързани с киното колекции, тъй като не съществува една структура, която да интегрира полската филмова култура, прави изключително трудно, ако не и невъзможно, ефективно създаване на институция, която да изпълнява функциите на цялостна колекция, обединяваща по-голямата част от предметите, свързани с историята на кино. Различните видове предмети са разделени и намират място в различни институции, разпръснати из цялата страна. Идеята за създаване на колекция от предмети, свързани с кино и кинематография в Łódź, има начало филмовото училище, създадено в града през 1948 година, където от 50-те години на миналия век се правят опит за създаване на архив от филмови копия и предмети, свързани с филмова техника в най-широкия смисъл на думата за целите на обучението. Идеята за създаването на музей е официално заявена през 1971 година, а година по-късно за място на такава институция е избрана построена през 1884 година еклектична сграда на двореца на лодския памукопроизводител Карол Шайблер, тогава все още заета от музикално училище. През 1975 година е създаден музеят за история на град Łódź, а 2 години по-късно е отворен отделът за филмовата култура, което е краегълен камен за създаването на независим музей за кинематография с поне национален обхват. В периода 1977-85 година е процес на комплектуване на колекцията, която включва експонати дарени от филмово училище, античен фотопластикон, тук можете да го видите на снимките, изработен от Аугуст Фурман в края на 19 век, както и плакати, филмови афиши, кинопрограми, отпечатъци и различни снимки. С заповед от 18 декември 1985 година кметът на Łódź създава музей за кинематография, който през януари 1986 получава статут и се настанява в двореца на Шайбер на площад Звиченства, площад Победа номер 1. Сградата е вписана от 1971 година в регистра на исторически паметници и това е сериозна пречка в процеса на нейното адаптиране за целите на събирането и предоставянето на музейни експонати, както и се нуждае от основен ремонт. Идеята на ревитализация е обновените исторически интериори да не могат да изпълняват административна функция и да се използват изключително за постоянни временни изложби и авторски срещи. Музеят за кинематография в Łódź отваря врати за посетители на 10 май 1986 година. В продължение на много години институция функционира основно като склад, ограничавайки дейността си до временни изложби, които се представят и извън музеи. Ремонтът на помещения на двореца продължава до 2006 година, а 2 години по-късно е открит първият етап от постоянната експозиция, посветена на история на полското кино – Łódź филмова, филмовият Łódź. Изложбата представя история на полската кинематография на фона на световната. Показва история на полската анимация, представя феномена на стереоскопия и изобретаването на стереография, реликви от филмовата техника, тайните на снимачната площадка и показва двореца Шайблер като място, където са работили филмови екипи. Исключително богата колекция на музея до голяма степен конгломерат на филмови сираци, така наречени. Нежелани предмети, към които по различни причини други институции не проявяват интерес, но които са важна част от културната памет. Музеят на кинематография в Łódź е институция, която потенциално съчетава архивни, научни и образователни практики, изпълнявайки много важна функция на собственик, депозитар на многобройни предмети, свързани с история на полската кинематография. Неговите колекции са разделени на тематични раздели: филмова техника, плакати и сценография, история на кино, съдържаща архиви, свързани с отделни филми и режисьори, включително документи, снимки, рекламни материали, филмови копия, сценарий и анимация. Нейта особеност и отчителна черта е залагането на предмети заместители, плакати, филмови пощенски картички, кадри, снимки, които са в основа на изложбата и колекцията. Сред приближително 80 000 експоната, само 2000 са филмови копия на игрални, документални и анимационни филми, докато колекция от филмови картички наброява 3000 броя, а плакатите и афишите полски и чуждестранни над 20 000, като се започна от 20 и 30 години на 20 век. Включително най-голямата в света колекция от плакати за филми на Анджей Вайда, горе-долу 3000 броя. Колекцията на музей включва и архивите и на създателите на полското кино: Andrzej Munk, Aleksander Ford, Jan Rybkowski, Wojciech Jerzy Has, Jerzy Kawalerowicz i Tadeusz Chmielewski. Тук можете да видите протокол от дипломен изпит на Krzysztof Kieślowski. Тя съдържа множество документи, снимки, бележки и кореспонденция, предадени от техните наследници. Индекса на Krzysztof Kieślowski. Колекция се допълва от 1000 кадри, колекция от сценарии, няколко хиляди филмови програми от цял свят, както и сценографски проекти за игрални и анимационни филми. Отделна част е колекция, представляваща история на полската анимация, включваща проекти на декори, герои, кукли и кадри от анимационни филми, също и награди, също и колекция от технически устройства, включва филмови прожекционни апарати, камери и различни други неща. Костюми. Колекция се допълва от читална и библиотека, а от 2017 година е реализиран мащабен проект, който изключително много укрепва Музея за кинематографията в Łódź като институция на паметта, свързана с история на полското кино. Това е архивът за устна история, който представлява хранилище на аудиовизуални материали, съдържащи интервюта с режисьори, оператори, сценографи, аниматьори, костюмографи, реквизитори, ръководители на продукции, както и с преподаватели, свързани с киното и филма, и с административен и технически персонал. Специфика на Łódź и неговото значение на полската филмова карта се изразяват не само в това, че тук са били разположени многобройни филмови студия и предприятия, свързани с кино, и все още има филмово училище, но в това, че тук се намират две институции, които събират и предоставят предмети, свързани с история на филмовото кино. Почти в непосредствена близост до музеи за кинематография е създаден Националният филмов център ЕЦ1, който е поместен в сградите на бивша топлоелектрическа централа номер 1, която от 1907 до 1 януари 2000 е осигурявала топлина и електрическа енергия на жителите на Łódź. 7 години по-късно започват дейности за ревитализация на обекта, собственост на града, като част от програма Нов център на Łódź. Добре, значи само имам време да ви покажа малко снимки от ЕЦ1. Тук може да видите как той изглежда. съвсем друг характер на експозиция, много мултимедии и преди всичко филм в центъра на експозиция, различни фрагменти може да се види. В сравнение с музея за кинематография, броят на предметите събрани в Национален център не е впечатляващ. Само 2500 експоната, свързани с полска и чуждестранна кинематография и филмова техника, магически фенери, прожектори, фотоапарати, камери, като и архивни предмети, плакати, снимки, филмови реквизити и костюми. Съжалявам, разбирам, че трябва да стигна до кратка конклюзия. Тук индекс на Роман Полански. Филмовите музеи в Łódź са отлично допълняващи се институции, които безспорно са архиви на паметта за полско и световно кино и кинематография. Музеят за кинематография е преди всичко традицията и магията на мястото, двореца Шайблер и неговата необичайно подчертана роля, свързана с редица филмови продукти, реализирани в неговите интериори. Това е също и безспорна специфика и обем на колекция, като историческа приемственост на колекция от предмети и архиви. За съжаление, фактът, че сградата е паметник на култура, води до редица ограничения по отношение на преустройство, модернизация и адаптация на помещения. С тези проблеми не се сблъсква Национален център, който с огромно си пространство все пак е едва от начало на своя път за събиране на музейни експонати, привличане на дарители и изграждане на репутацията си на място, което предлага възможност за изследване на разнообразната тематика на филмите и киното, тяхно минало, настоящо и бъдеще. За съжаление, със създаването на още една музейна институция, която събира и предоставя достъп до филми и предмети, свързани с кино, фрагментация на филмовите архиви и материали се увеличи, което несъмнено се затруднява приучването на материалите и изследването на история на киното. Благодаря ви много.
Благодаря, Войтек. Thank you, Войтек. You have real treasures for cinema fans and cinema filmmakers. So now I want to invite Martin Paluch, Institute of Theatre and Film Research of Art Research Center, Slovak Academy of Sciences. No, it's okay. He will present his paper, Found Footage, Archives, History, Post-Avant-Garde Approaches. So, you
start?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me, and I will start. Post-avant-garde Austrian filmmaker Gustav Deutsch preferred an inventive approach to the classification of archival film materials. For this reason, he was particularly concerned with creating experimental found footage film compilation. In addition to their aesthetic quality, his films also contain a certain amount of criticality and self-reflexivity. Deutsch is particularly interested in the analysis of the film medium and film history. His projects demonstrate how the collage form and the recontextualization of archival film materials contribute to contemporary research on cultural history and society. Livio Bolley, a Belgian expert on early cinema, film history and experimental film, has published a short essay, Gustav Deutsch, Visual Thinker, in the collection Film Unframed, A History of Austrian Avant-Garde Cinema. It deals with not only Deutsch's film trilogy called Film East. Why he calls him a visual thinker becomes clear after a deeper examination of the progressive approaches that Gustav Deutsch introduced with scientific precision into the concepts of his post-avant-garde filmography. Deutsch was born in 1952 in Vienna, where he successfully completed his architectural studies from 1970 to 1979. From the early 18 until his death in 2019, he was continuously engaged in experimental filmmaking and is considered one of the main representative of the Austrian post-avant-garde. Among his seminal film works, in which he systematically deals with the phenomenology of the medium of film, is film named Adria, holiday films from 1954 till 1968, with subtitle The School of Seeing 1, and also in the trilogy Film East 1 to 6, Film East 7 till 12, and Film East A Girl and a Gun. In this group of content-related works, we can also include World Mirror Cinema, episode 1 to 3, or Shirley, Visual of Reality, or How We Live, Messages in the Family. The term visual thinker accurately describes the nature of his post-avant-garde approaches, which balance on the edge between science and art. On the one hand, they are based on the practice of archaeology. On the other hand, they are moving towards something that contemporary writers refer to as archiveology. The dominant area of Deutsch's interest are in particular the history of early cinema, phenomenological expertise in the medium of film, visual anthropology, sociology with overlaps into reception studies. In his films, he offers new perspective on cultural practice, now influenced by the use of digital techniques in everyday life, in science and art. The nature of his work is interdisciplinary. It is suitable for understanding the functions of the apparatus and the film medium in terms of a specific cultural and social phenomenon. For Deutsch, the film archive represents a tool for research into the psychology of perception, the the functionality of memory and human experience. The analysis people's ordinary interactions with film representations of various natures. Deutsch's visual critical method of working with archival film material developed gradually, but the reflection of human experience shaped by contact with the film apparatus is already present in the first found footage film from 1990, Adria holiday films from 1954 till 1968, with subtitle The School of Seeing 1, mentioned above. The compilation film consists of appropriated fragments of amateur home movies in 8 and 16mm formats, which Deutsch collected through purchases at flea markets or through advertisements in the daily press. This method of collecting archival segments corresponds directly to the methods of production used by found footage filmmakers. More important than the collection of material is the conceptually sophisticated approach Deutsch uses to sort the archive. It reflects a creative intent that aims to offer viewers a sophisticated visual analysis of the filming of amateur footage. The holding blocks of the resulting film are domestic archival films from roughly the same time period, 1954 till 1968. Regardless of their authors, they are characterized by the fact that they contain on the identical subject matter. They are amateur recordings of family holidays by the Adriatic Sea, captured by middle-class Austrian families. The time frame of 1954 till 1968 is related in the aim of analyzing amateur archives that were created only under the influence of the photographic practice of this time, even before the mass spread of television in households. This is because television practice could negatively influence the ways of recording, selecting, evaluating, or filming situations practice from the point of view of the ordinary Austrian tourist. The subtitle, The School of Seeing 1, points to this fact. It refers to the process of self-education through practice, while deliberately capturing appropriate moments that amateur filmmakers experience during family holidays on the Adriatic coast. Amateur filmmaking was such a widespread hobby in the period under study that Deutsch could only create a collage from material originating from one particular destination, which contributed to the objectivity of the visual critical reflection. In Scott MacDonald's The Sublimity of Document, Cinema as Diorama, in the author's interview with Deutsch, we find a characterization of the categorization of domestic archives and a description of the creative method in working with them. Deutsch states, I first look in detail in the home movies I had collected without any structure in my mind. I then decided to categorize the film into actions in the sense of the filmmaker's activities in making the film, and reactions in the sense of people's actions in front of the camera. I then devised the following more detailed organization. Actions. First, still camera observations. 1.1, still lives, signs of streets, hotels, towns, etc. 1.2, images in motion, the sea. 1.3, incidents, different types of visual event. 2, images from moving objects, panoramas. 2.1, from cars. 2.2, from bicycles. 2.3, from boats. 3, description, camera movements. 3.1, left to right. 3.2, right to left. 3.3, up. 3.4, down. 3.5, search. 3.6, chasing moving objects. And then reactions. 4.1, mimicry and gestures. 4.2, walking for camera. 4.3, spontaneous action. 4.4, close-up camera view. In MacDonald's words, the plan also included section 5.1, in which the final perforation of the material ran through the end of the film. From the composition of the shots, Deutsch drew some general conclusions based on the analysis and evaluation of actions, the ways in which amateur filmmakers work with the recording of reality in front of the camera, and reactions, the subject performing in front of it. Already in the Adria project, we find clear traces of the critical approach that Deutsch applies and develops in the subsequent work, when he works again with appropriated film materials from film archives. This time it comes from the collections of European National Film Archives in the films trilogy as Film East or in the film World Mirror Cinema. It is evident that in the Adria project, Deutsch sorts and arranges the footage according to a well-defined formal key and the informational content of such segment. It takes a strictly scientific approach to the organization of the material. He is not interested in causal connection between the shots. He systematically arranges the footage into typified segments or formally defined series. The resulting structure of the film does not form a syntagm in the sense of a coherent and linear narrative, but quite the opposite. The division of the shots into two main categories of actions and reactions result in a paradigmatic structure. Juxtaposition of shots form groups that coexist side by side, but do not form a classical narrative structure. This method of organizing archival materials into categories by number and title is reminiscent of storing information on a computer screen, where related groups of files are stored in folders, based on typological, formal, or contextual relatedness by time of creation and location of files underneath. Gustav Deutsch's selective filmography is characterized by a formal, informational, non-narrative, categorical form and an innovative way of working with the archive. The viewer does not perceive a linear narrative when watching his films. Rather, he or she witnesses a paradigmatically ordered analysis of the ways of recording according to subject matter. The viewer participates in the presentation of a typology of production processes of creation, or even invariant manifestations of cultural practice, as it may apply in a particular historical period and in a particular cultural and social environment. Deutsch is primarily interested in cultural practice. His films have an overlap with visual anthropology, sociology, or ethology. However, they can also be related in the exploration of the phenomenology of the medium, film is 1 to 6, with the analysis of the development of genres or typical manifestations of fiction and documentary in the early period of cinema, film East 7 to 12, or with the analysis of real and assumed audiences in the early days of cinema in film World Mirror Cinema. The conceptual division of the archives into numbered series, but more or less infinite series, which are arranged paradigmatically on the basis of selection and according to formal affinition and informational content, forces the viewer to critically re-evaluate three traditionally accepted conventions. The first concern the understanding of the functions of the film archive as a museum type of institution. The second reveals the relationship between archival representation and referential historical reality. And the third problematizes the approach to history, which is not seen as a causal succession, but rather as a plurality of indifferent visual representations that stand in for history. An archive is not a museum type of institution. Representation is just one of many views of an event. History does not have a causal sequence. It is made up of a plurality of indifferent visual representation that represent history.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Yes, fine.
Thank you.
Good. We have questions probably, but afterwards. Yes, thank you. And now I want to invite Ioana Spasova-Dikova, Institute of Art Studies, Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. Her paper is Film Acting in the Archives, the Bulgarian Case, 1920s, 1940s. Here you are.
Oh,
Here
thank
you
you.
are.
Until I'm trying to put my presentation, I want to express my gratefulness for the organizing committee for organizing this conference and where we can share our investigations. So here, I'm not going to show you some results, but the process of investigating. This presentation, in fact, is a part of a larger project that is supported by the Bulgarian Science Fund, and Sasha Donev is his leader, the leader of this project, that is devoted to the film culture, arts, and national images in Bulgaria between the two world wars. And my special focus in general of my whole study is about the acting in films. So it's a series of, investigations that I'm doing in different fields of how to study and reconsider acting during this period. So for me, it was very challenging to prepare this paper where I shall discuss the sources that we have for film acting during that period. Here I want to start with that there are not all the reels, film reels preserved, so that in a way, as far as I'm coming from theater, and in theater there is a problem that we have no evidences and tape recordings. Here from time to time I have the same problem because I cannot watch the film, although I always, in a way, we all theater scholars envied film scholars for that they have their films. So here I'll say,
it's part of them.
Yes. So here I want to say my general thesis that the film, in a way itself, is an archive and object of study, and on the other hand, it is something that is a source of study. So that this is very important while talking about acting. Because there are many points of view connected with what is archive. So I'm not going to avoid the question of what is archive, although all these days we're talking about it. So I shall say a few words, of course, because it's very problematic. So here I'm not going to read all the definitions, but the main definition, this is a collection of historical records. And here, well, it's a simple, very simple. Historical records, evidence is collected. But here comes that the archive is not only collected, but there must be something more. So here we discuss the archive as a place, the libraries, the museums that are also there are sources and so forth. In a way here I want to say that many of the views say that there must be institutionalization of the archives, to have institution. I shall say a bit later a few words about it. And here I want to read Britannica. It's very simple for me, quite simple, and not giving really the idea of archives. Archive is a place in which public records of historical materials such as documents are kept, and the material that is stored in the archive. So that we were talking about, this is the place and this is the content, both. One more definition for me is important, that is quite to be discussed, because in our institute we have archives, and to systematize them we have certain difficulties. It is connected that when we are talking about archives, we might have in mind normally unpublished and almost always unique, unlike books and magazines, of which many identical copies may exist. That means that archives are quite distinct from libraries with regard to their functions and organization, although archival collections can often be found within library buildings. In fact, we all theater and film scholars do not share enough this position, because for us, in our sources, archival sources, we include also written texts. So I shall discuss also this point, and we have seen that in this museum that Professor Jovjak was talking, in fact, these materials, especially when we are talking about digital sources, digital archives, already they become, in a way, these textual forces, in a way, they become archives. So this is a point to be discussed in general, and I think it will be discussed in the society. Still, it's not solved, especially in the digital era. I said that I shall say a few words about the institutionalization of archives. And I'll start with the etymology. And here I'm not going to read. I want to show you the etymology of the word, you see, in dictionaries. So when you go deeper into the etymology, you might find how much things means archive. It's really a nightmare. Here I also will say that the word might be connected with ancient, former, of old times, of the past, shortly to say, and with the town hall, residence, public records, magistrates, magistry, special boards, headquarters, and so forth. So the rule is there as well. Here, again, I have summarized, but there is no time to tell you. It is interesting that the first principal element and practical of conduct principles of knowledge, it was first to treat archives like that, Anaximander. That is very deep definition of the concept. And so also it is interesting that under archive it is to organize a feast as well. So, and so forth and so forth. It's really a lot of information one can get from studying the etymology of archive. So it's a dynamic thing, and I shall say about this. Here is the very famous definition of Jacques Derrida in his lecture. It was, in fact, paper he presented in 1995, I think 4. It was a conference that is named Archive Fever, a Freudian Impression. So that this is the beginning of this lecture, and here the important is that he, describing what is archive from a contemporary point of view, you see it's already the 90s of the previous century, that the name is associated with commencement and commandment. So beginning and ruling. So this is very, very important. And with the archons who had the rule, could change the rule, and had the power to have the rule. In their places were the archives. This comment of Derrida is very important for saying that the archives are bounded with the society, with the state, with the rules, with the power in a way. So here comes another definition of Michel Foucault that is earlier than Derrida's, and it is bounded with discourses. That means that Foucault treats archives as something that is discursive, that can be interpreted. Derrida also gives such a concept of the interpretation of the archives. So they're not something standing. They're not just monuments and sources. They're documents that are interpreted in different periods. This is also very important methodologically. As far as we're talking about film archives, and I said already, simply to say, usually it is simplified, the picture. The definitions of film archives is a collection of films. But we have seen that when we are talking about film archives from the point of view of a scholar who is studying film, and especially film acting, by the way, especially in these cases, it is much more than collection of films, because, for example, the main archive is the film archive. We name it in Bulgaria Filmoteca. He's talking about museum of film. So here this concept of film archive in its core, it's bounded with other sources, with libraries, museums, and all the evidences that we have. And it is very important while studying the 20s and the 30s, the beginning of film, because I said that there is a lack of enough sources. You cannot take the film just to watch it. From time to time, they're just parts preserved. So to get an idea about the whole, you have really to use all the sources that you have around. Written, iconographical, audio, video, digital, and so forth. And here I have shown the different sources. These are documents. This is, for example, document for a film to be shot of the director, and so forth. The memoirs, the films themselves, the posters, everything. So here very quickly, because we know we know all them, but I shall say that there are, let me say, 4 types. One are the written ones, scenarios, diaries, theoretical articles, etc., on paper. This division is made according to the media of the source. So it's a very simple division, although all the divisions usually are not enough. While talking about the written text, we have to have here in mind about the filters of correction, because you see, when you have diaries or memoirs, the people say very good things about themselves, so we have to filtrate. There is also policies, ideologies, and so forth that we have to filter when we are reading this written text to make the picture a whole. Very important in film acting, this is iconographical evidences, and the iconographical approach is very important. I have discussed this problem in the book that I have heard that today was delivered, so that the iconography as a method of studying art history is very important, and especially about studying acting. And here we mean these sources as paintings, portraits, cartoons, photos, and so forth. And very often there is no doubt that iconographical evidence, these are archives, Everybody says, oh yes, this is an archive. So, and also posters and so forth, these visual documents. Here, as far as I'm discussing this about the iconographical approach, here I'm saying a few words about it. And also very special for film, especially for film acting, I said the audio recordings and the audio, the voice of the, because it is when we're talking about voice, but here I'm not going to talk about that because the 20s is just silent film. And audiovisual evidences, I already said that the films themselves are sources, both sources and object of investigation. So now I'm jumping quickly. Yes, I'm jumping quickly in the archives in Bulgaria, what we have. And here I want to mention Petar Kardilov, who made a very special lecture about these sources, very valuable, in our seminar. And he's talking much about the newspapers as a source of evidences. And for him, for example, for his chronicles that they issued together with Irina Kitova and Zornica Krsteva, they indicated, usually they used the newspapers or the periodicals. And it's very interesting that from the period, a lot of information you can find in these periodicals. So here you see, I'm just showing a few pages, what they have reached. These are all the documents that they have used. And I want to say that it's a very, very useful book. It was issued in 2020. So I said about the iconographical evidences here again in these books you can find, it's very important, the iconographical, the cartoon. For acting, very important is the cartoon. This is also one special point I want to stress. And also the film itself, the memoirs. And here recently under this project was issued The Power of Film, where there is one more very valuable evidence, which is very common for the theater scholars. These are the reviews in books. So that here the reviews in books are showing, I have taken a lot of information from these reviews of Dobry Nemirov, about acting especially. Dobry Nemirov, Alexander Balabanov, Debe Mitov, and so forth. About the films, they are talking how the actors were playing. There are many positive, but many negative also reviews. And they're really very precise how the actor was playing, and it's not only how he's playing, but it puts it into certain social context and in a cultural context, and also where we are in the picture of the world cinema as well. You can find this as well. So that this is a very valuable, and I might name it that also this is one of our archives in our studies, although with brackets. And this is very quickly, I have told you all this, my troubles and everything. So we are continuing our project, and well, we expect further investigations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I gave you, Anna, 2 more minutes for advertising our books from the project. Thank you. Now,
I'm using them very much.
I'm changing the seats now. And I present my paper. It's about Zlatan Dudov, correspondence with Bulgaria. This paper gives a very first overview of the Bulgarian correspondence preserved in the archive of Zlatan Dudov, kept at the Academy of Arts in Berlin. The time frame of the letters is between middle of 20s until 1963, the year of his death. The Zlatan Dudov collection is one of the largest archival fonds held at the Film and Media Archive of the Academy of Arts in Berlin. The special archive collects, processes and preserves more than 160 personal collections and archives of filmmakers, radio playmakers, photographers, and media artists from the German-speaking area. The 2 largest personal archives are those of the GDR film directors Konrad Wolf, also president of the Academy under Socialism, and Zlatan Dudov. Dudov's archive, acquired after the death of his daughter 11 years ago and opened for research last year at 16th of April, contains materials related to his film and theater projects, official and biographical documents, and extensive correspondence with more than 1,000 people from different countries and different fields. Among them are more than 100 Bulgarian correspondents. Dudov belonged to the school of Bertolt Brecht, who taught most of his collaborators to carefully preserve every letter or document received, even the most insignificant, as well as drafts of their own letters if they had any, especially if they related to important creative, personal, or intimate matters. The opportunity to familiarize myself within just a few days with almost all of Zlatan Dudov's correspondence with Bulgaria has painted an unexpected, in a sense, but in fact deeply logical picture. Among the letters, the predominant ones are not those discussing creative, film, theatrical, or literary subjects, or socio-political issues, but rather those discussing personal, some semi-professional, but more often frankly domestic problems. It is important to mention that a very large part, probably 3/4 of all letters to Dudov, contain some request for help and assistance, in most cases material. This speaks of the shortage in Bulgaria of various goods desired by his correspondents, as well as their high assessment of Dudov's position and capabilities, including financial, in then GDR society. There are about a dozen of letters in which young people or their acquaintances seek Dudov's help in various ways to start studying in the GDR. Some of the would-be students offered the famous director to sign a declaration guaranteeing to support them when they arrived in the GDR to study. They assured him that he will not have to pay anything because they will work and provide their own income. He only needs to sign the necessary document. Besides Boyan Danovsky, Dudov's most famous Bulgarian correspondents are Boris Angelushev, Vasil Genov, Vasil Bakarjiev, artists Boris Mikhailov and Konstantin Kocev, film director Kirill Ilinchev, film critic Georgi Stoyanov Bigor, writer Armand Baruch, and liar and writer, not liar but lawyer. The biggest part of the correspondence is with Dudov's relatives. Although he was an only child, his parents had several brothers and sisters, so he had more than 10 cousins, with at least 5 of whom, living in Bulgaria, he had more or less frequent contacts. Many of these letters concerned Zlatan Dudov's care of his mother. During the long years of his emigration, she never left Bulgaria, where she lived with her second husband in the village of Nadezhda, a district of Sofia that was incorporated in the late 40s. A substantial part of the correspondence comes from complete strangers who have obtained his address from acquaintances or who simply send their letters addressed to the DEFA Film Studio or to the German Kinematografia Berlin for the director Zlatan Dudov. Dudov got in touch with some of them because he used every opportunity to send money and other necessities to his mother in Sofia. Very often, as a favor to Bulgarians visiting the GDR, he would give them GDR marks on the promise that they would give the same amount in Bulgarian leva to his mother. Because of the restriction of the provision of foreign currency to ordinary Bulgarians traveling abroad, this semi-legal exchange operation was much favored by Bulgarians traveling in the GDR. It allowed them to buy goods at very reasonable prices that were scarce or too expensive in their home country. The letters written to Zlatan Dudov by strangers are particularly indicative of two things. Firstly, the popularity in Bulgaria in the 50s and his popularity in Bulgaria in the 50s and early 60s. My generation has seen how in the decades after his death, his name and work have gradually fallen in the oblivion and he became alienated from Bulgarian culture. During his lifetime, however, he was quite well known to the well-informed Bulgarian public and especially to the more avid cinema goers. His fame began to grow after the premiere of his films from the 50s, Women's Fortune, Stronger Than the Night, and The Captain of Cologne, which were very successful in Bulgarian cinemas. His popularity peaked after the publication of Atanas Natev's interview in Narodna Kultura and Dudov's visit in Bulgaria in January 1958. The other factor that triggered the letters to Dudov from ordinary citizens was the peculiar tribal collectivist mentality of Bulgarians. It allows them, more than other nations, to identify with their successful and international prominent compatriots and to perceive them as their close acquaintances, almost relatives. That's what Aleko Konstantinov emphasized when Baiganu came to Prague to visit Konstantin Irecek uninvited. Zlatan Dudov's correspondents did almost the same. They wrote to the famous East Berlin film director asking him for various favors. I have also a first-hand insight into this phenomenon thanks to the accounts of the German professor of Bulgarian Norbert Randl. In the same way, a little bit later in the 70s and 80s, he was bombarded by requests for services and hospitality from close and distant acquaintances from Bulgarian literary circles visiting Berlin. Let's now look more closely at some of the letters Dudov received from people connected to cinema and theater. The richest material is the correspondence with Boyan Danovsky because of their long history together, which started in the mid-20s in Berlin. It became particularly active in the late 30s when Dudov planned to go back to Bulgaria. The next stage of more intense letters was middle 40s. At this point, Dudov thought about going back to his home country, but he was waiting for an invitation that would make sure he had good opportunities for his work. Instead of Sofia, such an invitation came from Berlin, and he got a prestigious assignment as chief artistic advisor at the newly founded East German film studio DEFA. After Boyan Danovsky became the director of satirical theater, he asked Dudov to send him his comedies. Danovsky wanted to produce one of them at the company he had directed between 1958 and 1965. Danovsky thought that Dudov's play, based on the script of his film The Captain of Cologne, was the most relevant. But his theater didn't have any suitable actors for the roles, so he offered it to the management of People's Army Theater. They staged it in the season 1961-62, directed by Kancho Iliev. Dudov exchanged a lot of letters with the actor Boris Mikhailov. He was successful in German silent cinema, but this was interrupted by the advent of sound. He then returned to Bulgaria, where he played on the stage of the National Theatre until his death. The archive has 5 letters from between Mikhailov and Dudov. Dudov also supplied Mikhailov with medicines that could not be found in Bulgaria. The first Bulgarian filmmakers to contact Zlatan Dudov were the early pioneers of Bulgarian cinema, Vasil Gendov and Vasil Bakarjiev. Gendov was one of the people who carried money sent to Dudov to his mother, and Vasil Bakarjiev wanted to write an article about Zlatan Dudov and asked him to send his biography with some information about his past and present activities and also on his future directions. Quote end. Bakarjiev tried to get in touch as early as 1951 and asked it again in 1952, after his visit to DEFA in July 1956 and his meeting with Dudov. Bakarjiev said he wanted to get material for the article for the 3rd time, but there is no response from Dudov in the archive, and as far as I know, Bakarjiev has not published such a biographical text. A similar request is documented in a letter from the head of the Bulgarian Film Archive at the time, Georgi Stoyanov Bigor. He sent Dudov a list of questions about whether either the archive would be willing to present the activities of Bulgarians in foreign cinemas. There are 8 questions on the list, and their answers would make a long memoir text, which Dudov probably wasn't willing to write. Also preserved in the correspondence are letters from 13 people who offered Zlatan Dudov their own scripts. Some of the writers even sent finished texts. Among them were not only amateur script writers, but also established authors such as the director Kirill Linchev and the writer Armand Baruch. Also unanswered were the letters sent by 3 film clubs from Dimitrovgrad, Dryanovo and Pazardzhik. The amateur filmmakers asked for encouragement for their activities, but also for some material support, cameras, film stock, etc. Of particular interest is the letter from Emil Arsenov of Plovdiv, who reminds Dudov on a meeting they had in Berlin in the early 30s on the eve of the production of Kulevampe. Arsenov's story is fascinating. He was a film journalist who published in various film magazines in Bulgaria, Turkey, and Romania. During the Second World War, he lived in France, Germany, and Austria. After returning to Bulgaria, he spent several years in Bulgarian Gulag camps and was arrested several times for his correspondence with Western film stars. However, he sent a letter to the communist director Zlatan Dudov ending with "Your devoted Emil Arsenov." Like all other contacts unknown to Dudov, Arsenov received no reply. This lack of responsiveness earned Dudov the reputation of being cold and arrogant, which left a deeper mark on Bulgarian film circles in the 70s and 80s than his actual cinematic achievements. His fellow Bulgarians found it difficult to accept the truth that Dudov's extraordinary commitment, who in addition to his own films was responsible for one of the DEFA film collectives and was active in public life in East Germany. Moreover, he was often attacked by dogmatic film critics for his uncompromising views and creative independence. Moreover, until the death of his mother on the 2nd of February 1958, he took every care to alleviate her lot, both materially and morally. The facts about the way her alcoholic second husband and their son, Dudov's half-brother, treated her in the last decade of her life are extremely unflattering. We can imagine how he must have felt unable to help her in any other way than with money, and having to deal with the various requests for services from his many Bulgarian relatives. On top of all this, he had to deal with some family difficulties in Berlin. In conclusion, the Bulgarian correspondence in Zlatan Dudov's archive does not reveal his cinematic convictions and the creative history of his own projects, but rather certain aspects of the Bulgarian national character and lifestyle and the relations in society in the 1950s. A careful and in-depth analysis of this letter in their entirety has yet to be undertaken. An initial assessment, however, suggests that the result is likely to be a rather unfavorable picture of the attitude of his fellow Bulgarians towards a successful European filmmaker. Thank you for your attention. And now I hope we can try a short discussion with our presenters. First of them, I want to ask Wojtek about the connection to these museums, Luch museums, with the National Film Archive and national institutions, film institutions. Какви са връзките на музеите с Националния филмов архив на Полша? Има ли ревност, конфликти?
Официално няма никакви конфликти, но само официално. Знам, че много сложно се получава различни материали. Имам проблем, че, например, Национален филмов архив има копии, но не може да ги разпространява. Значи, ако искаш да вземеш копия от Национален филмов архив, трябва да получиш съгласието на филмово производство в Вроцлав, което още повече усложнява тези връзки. Мисля, че най-добри контакти са между двете музеи в Луч. Между музея на кинематография и Национален филмов център. Официално всичко е както трябва, но както винаги има нещо друго, за което никой не иска да говори.
Благодаря. I have a question also for Martin. What about the accessibility of these Gustav Deutsch films projects? How they can be seen? Only ordered at the Austrian Film Museum or what?
No, you can see them on the festivals, maybe in TV, but I think Six-Pack is a product, is a distribution company which owns them.
They are owned by Six-Pack.
Yeah, Six-Pack, so you can ask for them. And maybe something is on internet, I don't know yet. But I saw them on the festival already. And they are really interesting because what interests me is how he works with archives. That he studied, for example, not only amateur archives but national archives as well. And he's doing this historical research of practice, amateur practice, or fiction directors or documentary directors practice in early cinema. And you can see the different ways of filming, and gives you really a good look to the history of cinema. Of course, it's not like it's the result work is artwork.
Yes,
it's the film. He's a filmmaker, he's a researcher, and he's doing new films from the archive materials. But it has this very special value that you can see all the differences and the richness of the early cinema, for example. So that's what is really interesting for me. I don't know if you know his work.
No. But I'm curious to watch them.
Okay.
For me, I saw some kind of connection to early Peter Greenaway's work, to his short films, because they have the same analytical approach to the cinema language, to the visuals. And is this connection in some way commented by Deutsch or some other researchers?
Because, for example, his trilogy, Deutsch trilogy, Film East, it's in German, but in English is Film East, is the answer to the question of André Bazin, what is the cinema?
Yeah.
So this trilogy is the answer to André Bazin, what cinema is. So that's why Film East 1 to 6, Film East 12, Film East, Girl, Anagram. So you know, it's connected to the theory and history. So it's
to the ontology of the film.
Yeah.
And I have no question for you, Anna, but a short comment. I think we are too critical to the Bulgarian film heritage. We have preserved, actually not we, but our culture, our film archive, the filmmakers, have preserved almost the same proportion from Bulgarian old movies like in the world, about between 10-15% of all existing films from the early periods of the cinema history are preserved. And also almost the same percentage from the old Bulgarian film is kept now in the Bulgarian National Film Archive. Our problem is that our film production were very poor at this first 2-3 decades of the filmmaking in Bulgaria, but we have almost the same percentage, and in the connection between the reviews, the newspaper articles or magazines, and the preserved parts of the movies, it's not no way to study the Bulgarian acting in the early Bulgarian films.
This was my point, in fact, that we have enough sources and materials, but from a very strict, narrow point of view, we have to combine them all.
Yeah.
This is my pathos, because only relying on the films that are preserved, this was my envy, and still they're very indicative for acting. We must, as archives on the topic of the conference, to use them all in the context, in the social context, and so forth. This was, in fact, the point. And there are many sources.
And one
and available.
more, yes,
Good.
one more is not very, how to say, used in Bulgaria, is the oral history. The recollections of the people that have seen these movies and are writing some memoirs or just articles, notes about the movies and the stars, Bulgarian film actors that they saw in when the movies are still existing.
A very good point. As far as, for example, when we're talking about archives, we have in mind also the interviews, so-called the interview as a method of study, empirical method of study, and collecting new archives is a very, very important point. But for that early period, there are not too much people alive. So now we are relying on the written documents, but it's really the spectator is very important. And here I said that one of the most useful books was this anthology, which are the viewers, which are the spectators, the intelligence, of course, but still it's very, very useful.
And this is also a collection. This is part of the all articles in the newspapers and magazines.
Of course. I have
much
met
more.
a lot.
Yes.
Yes, I have met a lot already. And it's really
Yes. Good. Some other questions, comments? You are welcome. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question to you, Alexander. Since you have seen the materials by Zlatan Dudov in Berlin, obviously I'm interested in what else is there, especially in relations to his free ethical practices and studies under Max Herrmann. So I guess that you don't have much time to research it all. Obviously, everybody is interested about Brecht and Piscator. So is there any material also to this pre-war activities?
Yes, I was actually only 5 days, and I was focused on Bulgarian stuff. But you know, you can try the archive directly. They have a data bank, and it is the data bank is open accessible, and you can ask the curators for some. You can ask them direct questions, but I think there are some materials for his work at Piscator Theater. I can't remember, probably something in connection to Max Herrmann studies at Humboldt University, but I couldn't have the time and the chance to work deeply in this direction.
I will check.
But for sure, Dudov's collection is one of the biggest. Actually, next to the Konrad Wolf's is the biggest in the Academy of Arts in Berlin. More questions? No, thank you. Thank you for your attention. And we're starting again, and at 12:30. Sorry for a little bit shorter lunch break.